Welcome back. The relationship between Canada and the U.S. is strained right now, and added restrictions and scrutiny at the border can make heading south a very stressful experience.
So here to help us know our rights, responsibilities, and what precautions to take to minimize our risk is lawyer Lily Coodin. Welcome back, Lily. Let's get right down to business. I want to start with the basics because this might sound like an obvious question, but are Canadians allowed to travel to the States right now?
You are definitely allowed to try to travel to the States right now.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that travel to a country where you are not a citizen is not a right. It is a privilege. It's why we make you go and get a passport and talk to immigration and customs before you go in. Every country has the right to control who comes into their border. So in Canada, we've been very lucky over the last many years that we've had sort of a very special privilege with the US. There's been free-flowing traffic back and forth. Gone are those days, I would say, at least for now. This administration has been focusing on the border. It hasn't so much been a legal change as much as it's been a change of policy and application. So we're seeing this focus, and Canadians are really just being treated like everyone else now.
So we're hearing about all these stories about Canadians from all walks of life being detained. So what has happened to these detained Canadians?
Yeah, there was one high-profile case, a woman from British Columbia who was going to renew a work visa. She went across a land border to do that. Her visa was denied, and instead of being sent home, as would probably have happened in the past, she was put into a detention center. And she was moved around for about 2 weeks. She ended up getting released because of the advocacy of her family and friends. And honestly, she is really one of the lucky ones. And I think it really just goes to show sort of the state of the relationship between Canada and the US right now. It's important to note this woman was not a criminal. She wasn't accused of any crime. It was really a matter of paperwork on her visa. And for anyone who has done like a work permit or a visa, mistakes can happen. Sometimes you're missing things. So you have to be very conscious of that, especially if you're applying for a work permit.
So, okay, planes, trains, and automobiles. What is the best way to travel to the States?
Definitely by air, because if you've ever flown to the States, you know that you clear customs while you're on Canadian soil.
That's a good point.
So you go to the airport, and if they say no, you're being told to leave the airport, but at least you're in your home country.
Yeah.
The issue with the land border is that you usually go over the water on a bridge, you enter American soil, but you haven't actually spoken to anyone yet. And if they say no, you are subject to the rules of the United States, not Canada, because technically you're in their country.
Good to know. Good to know. All right. So we've heard about the fact that people's electronic devices can be searched at the border. Is this true? What are our rights?
It absolutely is true. And to be honest, it has always been true.
Interesting.
This has always been the case, but again, we're seeing sort of a policy shift toward doing this more. So you want to think carefully about what's on your phone, what's on your computer. I've heard some people recommend like travel with a burner phone. I think there's nothing more suspicious than traveling with a burner phone. You know, unless you're like Tony Soprano, where do you even get a burner phone? So you just really have to think about it. The other thing to be aware of is that a lot of workplaces will have policies about your work devices, your work phone, your work computer. You may not even be allowed to take work devices across a border without getting permission first. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to that before you go as well.
Wow. So let's say a Canadian, maybe just as an example, has said on social media that they dislike the current president. His name is Donald Trump. And they search your phone, they find that. Is that enough to detain someone?
Well, border agents are given a lot of power, and a lot of what they do depends on the directive they're being given. So there's no law that says if you express an opinion against this administration, we're not going to let you in. But again, it's the application that matters. Your phone is just one vehicle for your views. Social media exists through a quick Google. And again, this has always been the case. If you are expressing dissenting opinions, we know that this administration is taking note. We've seen academics cancel, conferences. We've seen artists decide not to visit. And we know it's a government that, through their experience with law firms, with universities, they don't like dissenting opinions. So you really have to take into account what is your online footprint and, what are they going to find if they do a quick search of your name.
Even if your accounts are private, what happens in that?
I mean, if they take your device, they could probably access from your end.
Okay.
So let's talk about, you're deciding you're going to cross, but you're kind of worried about being detained? I'll be honest, I've said a lot of stuff about that administration. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's not hard to find what Melissa Grelo thinks about Donald Trump. So if you're worried, like, could you possibly be detained? What should you know?
So there are some things you can do to make the whole thing a little bit less risky. So the first thing is make sure that people know where you are. So no secret shopping trips to the United States where you're not telling anyone, because if you don't show up back at home, you want
Okay, we're
people
shopping
to know.
Canadian anyway.
That's right. You also want to think very carefully about the devices you take with you. You want to think very carefully about your mode of transportation. Can you fly rather than driving? And then finally, and this one seems extreme, but I promise you'll be happy if it happens, take the name and contact information of an immigration lawyer who works in your area where you live. You hopefully won't need it, but if you do, you'll be happy you have it.
Yeah. Good
This
point.
is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you've shown up at the airport and you've been turned away, and you've booked hotels, whatever. Do you have any recourse to get money back after if you've lost it on a flight?
Sometimes insurance will cover you, but this usually isn't part of your regular coverage. No. So if it is something that is concerning to you, call your insurer ahead of time. You can typically buy extra insurance for exactly this type of scenario. So call them in advance. Don't wait until it's happened.
Okay.
Wow. All right. So we recently learned that all Canadians who plan to stay in the U.S. for 30 days or longer must now register online with the Department of Homeland Security. I don't know if people know that. This could be challenging for the older people, the snowbirds, for example. What's the recourse if someone forgets or is unable to register and stays over the 30 days?
There isn't any. This is one of those areas that actually is a change in the rule. You must follow this. If you are going to the U.S. for longer than 30 days, you have to register with the Department of Homeland Security. It sounds scary. It feels like Claire Danes in Homeland is going to be your application.
Yes.
But it actually is a real thing. And if you don't do it, you could face a penalty of up to $5,000 US, by the way. That's even more in Canadian. You could face 6 months in jail.
Whoa.
You can also be banned from entering the US for some period of time or permanently. So it is very important. If you're someone who doesn't use a computer, get someone to do it for you. You're also, by the way, supposed to carry proof that you have registered on you at all times.
At all times.
Oh my God.
At all times.
Yes.
Just don't go.
Yeah, not worth it.
My God. Lily, timely, mind-blowing, valuable information for every single one of us.
Thank you, Lily.
Thanks, Lily. That's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Save this segment. Show everybody when they come home tonight.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.